Hey, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to today's live stream. I hope everyone watching had a wonderful and relaxing Father's Day weekend. I know I was able to spend some time with my little ones over the weekend and got to go to one of my favorite establishments, Waffle House, which I don't often get to do being based in Chicago. So I was in Ohio visiting with family over the weekend and took advantage of that. So really excited to, be on the show today. And I hope, like I said, everyone had a wonderful Father's Day weekend and they're recharged and ready to take some action this week. For today's show, I am really excited. We're going to be providing some updates on where we're at as an organization, a few updates on my training for the Pedal for Progress ride. And I'm really excited to bring in one of our partners with Cherry Willow, Grant. Grant is the founder and CEO of 5-Star BDM. So we're going to be discussing a little bit about Cherry Willow and our partnership model. And Grant, thank you for joining me today. I would love for you to just take a few minutes and introduce yourself to the audience. And then we can kind of get into, Cherry Willow and the partnership model and then your work over at 5-Star BDM.
Absolutely. First, I want to thank Cherry Willow and the entire Cherry Willow family for having me, on the show. Met Matt a few weeks ago, through some outreach, and they were telling me about their program. Say, hey, would you like to collaborate with this? Something that you want to be a part of? And I was like, of course, this is exactly what I want to get involved in. I want to talk about how do we impact and change our environment by not just talking about it, but by putting our financial backing behind it and making a difference that actually helps our fellow man. So I am just so happy right now to be a part of this show. 5-Star BDM. We do a lot with personal branding, business development, and also investment banking across those different spectrums. And we work with people just like you that are looking to, how do I take my level and what I do from a career development, business development to a higher level. And this is why I'm working with Cherry Willow.
Yeah, we're really excited to have you on as a partner. So you can see 5-Star BDM and their work through visiting their website at 5starbdm.com. If you want to see the collab merchandise that we have live on Cherry Willow's site, you can check it out there. It's Cherry Willow Apparel in the shop right under collabs. And with these collaborations, it's just a really cool way to not only get the messaging out there for the great work that 5-Star BDM is doing, but also to reinvest in the community, and particularly in Cherry Willow's case, reinvest in the people who are experiencing homelessness. I know that is the mission that we are drawn towards, and really trying to be the change that we want to see in the world. There were a lot of social causes and things like that are happening over the weekend, people getting out. And I feel like that's one of the things that makes this country so great. It's just the freedom to get out there and express your views, and really, try to be impactful. So Grant, I'd love for you to discuss a little bit about how you help support these entrepreneurs and really create those brands that are out there to make that social impact. Would love for you to discuss your process a little bit.
Oh, I love that. And thank you for the opportunity and the platform. Number one, I need for everyone, especially everyone listening, to understand that you are a brand. Whether you realize it or not, every single one of us carries a brand. And what do I mean by brand? Let me give you a definition. What I feel a brand is. A brand is not what you narrate about yourself, so to speak, right? That's your personal story. It could be your business story, your career story. The brand is what others feel about you, right? So whatever Matt has in his mind about Grant McGaw and 5-Star BDM, that's the brand, right? So the brand is what others feel about yourself. And if you're not intentional about building that brand, the perceptions that others will have about you could be not correct. It could be completely incorrect. Fake news, if you want to call it that, AI generated, who knows what it be, because you're not being intentional about building out your profile and who you are and why you do it in a digital manner. That's what I do from a personal brand perspective. I want to help you to digitize your brand. I want you to help you to utilize these search engines like Google, like YouTube, like it could be Amazon, whatever it may be, that helps to promote your particular cause and mission in life, whether it's business development, career development, financial empowerment, technology innovation. I do all of these things to help people. And I use a framework I call the BRAVE framework. BRAVE is an acronym, BRAVE. That's for brand identity, right? That is for resilience and research. And that's also for authenticity and application and assets, for visibility, for value, for velocity. And then we're talking about that E, which is execution. That's the energy to evolve. And again, this all starts because you have to be brave in order to meet your objective, because you always have to overcome some type of challenge, some type of resistance in order to reach your desired state. That is what 5-Star BDM is all about from a mission perspective, right? But as we do these things, my mission has always been this: he who has gained from others, especially from the environment, from the community, must give back in some kind of capacity, right? We can't hold these things only for ourselves because they come from the entire family. This is why I like Cherry Willow. They afford a vehicle for our two brands to collaborate and come together for a common cause. And this particular cause is around homelessness. And homelessness can happen to anybody. You can be displaced in so many different ways. It's not always like, well, because of things that I've done in my life, and this ended up in homelessness. That could be the case. Sometimes it's natural disasters. It could be, a nation's upset or at war, as we see in certain parts of the world. So many different causes that go into homelessness. But I say we have to have some empathy. We need to understand what is taking place and give an opportunity to give back. This is why I'm working with Cherry Willow. So let's have a candid discussion about that.
Yeah, I love how you set that up. And I think often that's one of the biggest misconceptions about homelessness in general, is that these people are somehow to blame for ending up in those circumstances. To your point, there are many, many different ways in which people end up on the streets. Certainly, the medical system in this country is one of the largest contributors to homelessness. People that get injured, they have medical bills, maybe they're no longer able to work. That's a route towards homelessness. There's youth that are aging out of the foster care system and they don't have anywhere to go. Typically, those youth end up in a homeless shelter. Then you have people that are, re-entering society after serving their time in prison. Those people often run into housing challenges. It's very difficult to find landlords that are willing to take them on as tenants. And without that security of housing, they can end up in another bad, desperate situation, and that may impact their ability to make a good decision. And that's really, a few of the main causes. But really, there's so many different ways that people can end up on the street, and that's why I always advocate for just having a conversation. When you come across somebody that's homeless, make eye contact with them, introduce yourself, and ask them their name. You don't know the last time that they had just that little bit of human connection. And that can really go a long way towards providing someone hope. Even if you don't have the financial ability to support these individuals, you can get a bottle of water and carry it around in your car. You can have granola bars or something else that you can at least provide and give to someone. But even if you don't have those things, stopping, acknowledging the humanity, and really just taking a moment to take a genuine interest in this person. This is someone that's in your community. They're not somebody that's outside of the scope of everyone else. Like, we need to view these individuals as our neighbors, as people that we want to take a vested interest in, and then we can advocate and highlight the solutions that exist. There are programs across the country that have been successful in providing housing. Housing First has over a 90% retention rate of people staying in housing a year after they use the program, because they're able to not only be in housing, but be supported. And having that solid foundation to build from, enabling people to empower themselves to work towards becoming the best version of themselves, those are where you see the most successful outcomes. And that's where Cherry Willow comes in, is around alignment, and really about collaboration. So helping nonprofits to get your mission out there, get the wearable advocacy. You have your volunteers, you have your supporters wearing your message in the community. And that just helps to get your message out there and helps to make connections with more people that could potentially be, new donors. They could potentially be new volunteers. It could be an opportunity to get a new sponsor on board. And so that's why we use apparel, outside of the funds and raising additional funds to make an additional impact. The messaging in the community is extremely important. And, in today's digital age, we're able to connect across a live stream. I know you're in Omaha, I'm in Chicago. People are watching from across the country. But also technology allows us to disconnect from the person right next to us. And so that's why I always say to just, take a moment and be empathetic, be curious, and take an interest in these people, as they have their stories. And that's what we're proud to tell at Cherry Willow.
Man, you love how you frame that everyday man, the everyday person that you're dealing with. It could be you. That you would be surprised. I know there was a book that came out, 6 Degrees of Separation. Everyone is like 6 degrees separated from someone else. And because of circumstance and situations, you're able to continue on your particular life. However, there are people sometimes things happen, but they might end up, living with a relative, right? They're effectively homeless. They don't have their own home. But if they didn't have that relative, they would then find themselves in situations where society either can't work with them, they don't qualify for certain things, and they find themselves on the street in many different circumstances. There's not always someone's, that person's on drugs, or that person's, got an alcohol problem, or, they've caused their own problem. There are circumstances that take place. I wanted to beat that home because I want people to understand why people are where they are, and they all have personal stories. 5-Star BDM is all about personal stories. We want to understand the story. We want to give you a platform to tell your story. There's no one too big or too small to be on my platform to talk about what it is they feel that will help someone else. That's the goal. It's not just to talk about yourself, it's what you're doing to help someone else or some community or something else. You're providing your skill set, your tool set, your mindset that can help someone else along life's way. I am always floored when I go into a situation with people I really don't know that well, to Matt's point, and the conversations start happening and we start talking about, a real subject. This really happened. I was there. They were talking about some new things with artificial intelligence. There was a room full of about maybe 20, 30 people. They were professionals in the space, and they got to talk, and I got to introduce myself and who I was. And after it was all said and done, a gentleman came up to me and said, "Grant," I said, "Yeah, I know who you are." I said, "Really?" He said, "Yeah, you gave a talk from a CEO from ChinMed who gave his whole life story and talked about his why and why he did what he did. And because of that, and I listened to that particular show, I was able to then to go into the interview that following week and give such great answers. And I connected with the mission and vision of the organization and what the platform, what they were about. I got the job. And I want to thank you for doing that. Now, I wasn't intentional about helping him to get his particular promotion, but it happened because I'm putting out good information out into the community. You never know what's going to happen. Because you buy a shirt from Cherry Willow, right? And then the proceeds from that shirt goes into a system that allows someone else to avoid homelessness. And because they did that, they were then able to get gainful employment or find a business that they got into. And you'll hear these stories. These are things, I'm not making them up. You hear about so many people, like they find themselves in dire straits, and because they got that little light, that little change that happened for them, they were then able to make the necessary changes to actually develop their life and be a benefit to other people. So to Matt's point, And we see people, especially at summertime now, we can walk around, you see them downtown, some other locations. Nothing wrong with giving a person a bottle of water, right? But how about giving them the shirt almost off your back to help them on life's way? What do you think, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, and that's part of the reason why we're using apparel is because of the connection. So like you can see this design here, the humanized not otherized design, asking for unconditional love. And you brought up earlier about brands being what people think about. And for me, when I created Cherry Willow apparel, I want it to be a brand that people think of unconditional love. That's what we advocate for. And when you wear Cherry Willow and you're out in the community, you create those connections with people. And that's one of the things about homelessness is just meeting people where they're at, accepting them, loving them, providing support. Because these are people that homelessness is a very challenging and traumatic experience that many people face. And to your point earlier, you brought up the hidden homeless, right? So that's people that are couch surfing, that are people that are staying with family members, and oftentimes that impacts a lot of students and children. So that's one of the statistics that I'll always share whenever I have a platform. Is 30% of the people impacted by homelessness are families, and so 84% of those families are actually headed by single mothers. And as a single father, yesterday being Father's Day, there's a significant amount of single dads that experience homelessness as well, about 300,000 every year. So raising children, they say it takes a village. And we need to bring that mindset to care for everyone in our community, come together and not just, help them, but believe in them so that they can believe in themselves. And sometimes that's what people need, if they're going through a difficult time and they've stopped believing in themselves, having someone else that comes in and does have that unconditional love. And that was part of my why for starting Cherry Willow. Is I saw a few family members that I love deeply battle mental health issues, and if they didn't have family that showed up for them in unconditional love, we would have been in a completely different situation. And so that's what we can be for the people in our community that are experiencing homelessness, is people that are showing up with that unconditional love. We can all take it upon ourselves to educate ourselves more on the systemic issues that lead to homelessness, the rising cost of housing, wages that are not keeping up with the cost of living. And so a lot of the factors that are beyond these individuals' control, that we can actually come together and affect policy change, because it's actually, obviously more humane to get people into housing, but it's also more economic. When you invest in housing individuals, it reduces the burden on emergency services. It's less expensive than having people being cared for through shelters, or, with this administration's push towards criminalization, it's also significantly less expensive to provide housing for individuals than it is for the cost of covering them in a prison system. So that's a lot of the advocacy work, is just about education and having people take an interest in the solutions, so that we can have more widespread support for these solutions, and not blame these individuals who are in these circumstances. And so as a brand, that's really what we're trying to evoke, is unconditional love, and doing that by showing up, by educating people, and hopefully inspiring them to take those small daily positive actions in their community to get more involved and support people. And so I'd love for you, Grant, to kind of talk about how entrepreneurs, when they're on their course of building a brand, like how can they start to take some of these actions that they're going to build that consistency and that credibility, so that they can have the image that they want when people associate themselves with their brand. How do they go about that? What are some of the foundational elements that are most important for brands in early stages?
I am so glad that you stated that. People are looking for a competitive differentiation, because typically, unless you're a super genius, you're not going to develop something that's not already developed. It's not already out there in some form or fashion. So you have to differentiate yourself in other ways. What I have found, and you can do some research on this by some of the most renowned branding experts in the world, David Acker was on my show. That's David, that's Aaker. He's known as the grandfather of modern day branding. And the thing that he is focused on right now is purpose driven brands, purpose driven advantage. You got to be more than the balance sheet, right? It's not, you have to be profitable if you're going to be in business. But then what are you doing beyond just profitability to enrich the environment that is enriching you, right? Take in point someone who buys a shoe at Nike. Well, anybody can buy that shoe from Nike, right? Nike's a well-known brand. People know that brand, right? Well, you buy that shoe from Nike. Well, guess what? What is Nike doing to reinvest in that person that is reinvesting in them? What is the purpose behind that? What can you do? And it's not always monetary, so to speak, but are you providing opportunity for growth in your community? What is the purpose about what you are trying to accomplish? What emotional connection are you now creating with your ideal clients, your ideal customers, the people that do business or you want them to do business with you? That's more than just a transactional situation. You look at some of these brands right here like Patagonia. What do? All they do is they make outdoor gear for if you want to go hiking, biking, horseback riding, whatever. However, they tie it to an emotional connection. They tie it to a purpose, right? Money that comes to us, we're going to reinvest it in the community. We're going to reinvest it in stopping world hunger, or we're going to make sure that someone has clothing. In the case of Cherry Willow, I love their brand because they have a purpose behind what they're doing. Yes, they have apparel. They want you to buy their apparel, of course. But what are they doing with that apparel, right? Or doing with the money from the profits from that, they're giving it back to the community in a way that they can actually appreciate. Hey, because we did business with Cherry Willow, we were able to get some homeless shelters built. We're able to get people off the street, or we're able to understand why they're homeless. So let me tell you again about homelessness. And he brought up a great point. Because of the rising cost of housing and the wage, actually, I would say even decreasing because of the time value of money, many people on a monthly, weekly, daily basis are facing potential homelessness through eviction. You lose your job today, what happens? Who pays the rent? How does that occur? What happens when all of a sudden you go through an eviction process through the court and you're thrown out on the street? Where do you go? Where are you at? These are real situations. It's not a small percentage of the population. Most people, this is a fact, are only living paycheck to paycheck. So by missing a paycheck, you can no longer pay for housing, right? And once that happens, it becomes very difficult you to get housing again because now it's on your record. Oh, you were evicted from your past apartment that you were living in. I can't take the risk and have you in my apartment, right? So these are things that are happening in our community that we need to understand. And because we do understand it, you can start looking at, if I can tie a purpose to my business, which is my brand, I'm actually adding to the public will. I'm actually doing goodwill in the community. And I'm just not money grubbing, so to speak. I'm only trying to, admonish to the people of greed. No, I am taking money in and I'm putting resources and finances back into the community to help us all be a stronger force going forward. And we totally understand the plight at the other end of the spectrum. So I like brands that build, and they build with purpose. That is what 5-Star BDM does on a daily, weekly, monthly basis.
Yeah, and that was something that you said earlier, was the value of being authentic. And I think that really resonates with a lot of people. And to your point just a minute ago, depending upon what survey you look at, anywhere from 50 to 67% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. If you'd like a good book on evictions and that process, Evicted by Matthew Desmond is a tremendous book. It was a study of Milwaukee, and he lived in a trailer park and really immersed himself with people that were facing evictions, told their stories, and got to see firsthand the difficult decisions that these people are faced with, and also how much money people are making from some of the people that are the poorest in the community. That's a connection that many people don't often associate, the people that are facing poverty with the people that are profiting from that poverty. And so again, this is where we have an opportunity to create systems that are more about sustainability. So people over profit is another tenet of Cherry Willow and our brand. Whereas I think a lot of the problems in this country are because we've prioritized profit over people time and time again. Whether you look at the healthcare system, whether you look at the for-profit prison system, there are so many systems in this country that are set up just about profit. And I think that the consumer, the American consumer, is shifting their priority. And to your point, they are looking more for brands like a Patagonia, like a Cherry Willow, like a Bombas, brands that not only provide a high quality product and an experience, but they have a mission and they have a social good behind the brand. And so that is where, we as an opportunity at Cherry Willow to really help nonprofits, help businesses make an impact by creating apparel that is about wearable advocacy, that really speaks to a mission, and how you positively impact your community. You get that out there with your branding, and you really allow people to see the impact that you have, as a business owner in your community. You get to see the impact that you have as a nonprofit, and put it in a cool way where people are able to feel like they're a part of it. And especially for the younger audience, the millennials such as myself, Gen Z, we're more socially minded, and maybe don't have the level of wealth to be, high level donor for some of these nonprofits, for example. But if you want to go out and support your nonprofit, you can wear your shirt. You can tell the story of why does this organization resonate with you? Why do you take the time out of your busy schedule to volunteer, each week? Why do you want to support these organizations? And the more people that we have that are community minded and supporting organizations such as, Cherry Willow, but, your local homeless shelter, your local food bank and food pantry. These are organizations that have been in the community that are doing great work. And there is a tremendous amount of pressure right now on these organizations. Many nonprofits are short staffed. And that's another disconnection between, helping people, but also having an ability to make money. A lot of these nonprofits are operating on shoestring budgets, and they're not able to pay the wages that some of these for-profit companies are. And I think that that's a shift that we need to make, is to understand nonprofits, you need to be able to run like a business, and have a brand so that you're reinvesting the funds that you're generating. You're diversifying your revenue streams, so you're not reliant exclusively on grants. You're bringing in, a pool of donors. You're working with other businesses and sponsors. That's the best way that you can further that impact. And so adding apparel as a revenue stream, if you're not leveraging it right now, is a great opportunity. And then that also has the benefit of the marketing, getting the message out there with your staff, with your volunteers. And then that just perpetuates itself. You get more conversations. There's more awareness to your cause. People are excited, and that's how you can get introduced. I've been introduced to brands, like of nonprofits through people that I saw, just on the street. Hey, what is that? So you see 5-star BDM, and someone comes across that shirt. Oh, what is that? That's really cool. I want to learn more about it. And so that's something that apparel is a unique way to do that. And so we'd love for you to talk about the brand of 5-star BDM, and even if maybe you could start about how you decided to start your organization. Whenever I have the opportunity to speak to a founder, I want to know, like, what was your founding story? How did you come up with 5-star BDM as a concept, and how did you bring it to where it is today?
Oh man, look at that. Matt says, "Man, what's your origin story?" I like the origin story. I love the origin story because I learned to tell my origin story by talking to other people. I'm a big fan of Chris Do. Most people, you may know Chris Do. That's Chris Do, right? He's very big in the branding space, in the personal branding space, and also in the design space. But he learned not just his technical skills, but he learned how to operate business and be able to communicate business values at a high level. And I was watching one of his videos, and he said, "You've got to have a compelling origin story when you are presenting yourself digitally on platforms like what, so someone can read who you are, what you're about. People buy your why more than it is of what you do. Like why you do it is very important. So what I mean by the origin story, and his example was he loved this, and I had fallen in love with it too because I remember reading Marvel comic books. I'm a big Marvel fan. I love Marvel, right? Most people understand, or at least they've read the story about how Spider-Man got his powers. This is his origin story. And this is an interesting story because some people, they often get it wrong about his origin story. They say, yeah, he was a high school student. He went to a science lab. It was a field trip. He got out there. He's in a lab with other kids, and there happened to be a radioactive spider that's in one of the labs, and it got out and it bit him. And then he goes home and he starts to go through a transformation. He starts to get more powers. He's got all kinds of webs coming out of his wrist, and he's like, wow, what is going on here? And he understands he's acquired superhuman-like powers, like, right? Most people think that's the origin. Well, not really. That's not when he becomes Spider-Man. That's when he acquired the superpowers. He becomes Spider-Man when he begins to think like, you know what? I want to impress the girl, right? Get her attention. I need to get some money, potentially buy a car, take her out to dinner or anything of that nature, so that he can then, began to court her to become his girlfriend. So he finds this wrestling match, and he says, "Hey," they said, "Hey, we're going to give the winner of the wrestling match, X amount of dollars. Maybe it was $5,000 or something like that." So he goes to the wrestling match, right? His uncle takes him to the wrestling match. His uncle started to notice some things going on with him. Like something is not right with Peter Parker, and he tells him, Peter, you really got to know, how to utilize and become your strengths and become more responsible. And he just blows his uncle off, right? He really blows him off. But he runs into this place, and then he wins the match. But then he goes to collect his money, and the guy says, "I'm not going to give you any money because you obviously had so much more power than anyone else. It wasn't fair. I'm not going to pay you anything." And he's obviously upset. And as he's walking out, the robber, runs in. A robber just runs in, and then he takes the money. And Spider-Man could have stopped him, but he didn't. He didn't do it. He just like, well, that was your lot in life. And then he lets the robber go free. But he didn't realize as the robber went free, he go downstairs. He sees his uncle. He ends up shooting his uncle. And then when Spider-Man arrives and he sees his uncle, they're dying in the street. He tells him, with great power comes great responsibility. And he dies. And he's devastated. And then he follows the robber. He finds the robber. He actually kills the robber. But then he realizes he didn't bring back his uncle. He didn't acquire anything. And he became, the transformation in his mind was about, I need to use my power for the greater good to help others who are in need. And that is when Spider-Man becomes Spider-Man. That's his origin story. You can read my origin story on my website. It's not as elaborate as Spider-Man, but it does involve my father, and it does involve a tragic death, and it does involve a mistake, and it does involve me now getting involved to help others in the medical world, in the healthcare world, so they don't go through medical errors that could potentially lead to a death. And that is my origin story. And this is what propels me forward to help others on their mission on and utilizing my skill sets, my mindset, my tool sets to do what I do to help others. I've got 25 years in technology background. I've got 10 years in healthcare background. I got 7+ years in investment banking background that I want to help others to grow their opportunities, to get the resources that are necessary to make a difference in the community. And as I challenged Matt earlier, when I said, hey, you know what? I've had 60 years of living on this planet. I know what my experience has been like. The challenge for our younger generation, whether it's millennial, Gen X, Gen Y, is your purpose. Here's my challenge to you. Your purpose is to change the world. You're not here to perpetuate the same cycle of experience that we've already had. Your challenge is to change the world, change the paradigm, change what's happening. I see that with what Matt is doing, what Cherry Willow is doing. Let's change the way that we build commerce and build wealth for the entire community.
Yeah, that's really well said. And like for me, my origin story, if you will, it has a lot to do with the philosophy that I really love. It's called Ikigai. I don't know if you are familiar with this philosophy, Grant, but it's a Japanese philosophy, and it's the intersection of what you're good at, what you love to do, what the world needs, and what you can get paid for. And in our society right now, like obviously providing for yourself is if you want to help others, you first have to be able to take care of yourself. And so that was something that through experiences in my life I had to learn, and really had to go through some difficult things from a personal standpoint to become the person that I am today. And I think with a challenge, or with people who are struggling, there's really a huge opportunity there to turn that and build it into a positive. And so that's what I was able to do, was able to kind of take some of these experiences that were very challenging, challenged me mentally, challenged me physically, and just ask myself like what I wanted to be and what did I want to stand for. As a single dad with 3 kids, and so they're always leading me. Where it's like I what do I want to set an example for them? And to your point, Grant, we as the younger generations evolve, I want my kids to know that they can go out there and change the world, that whatever they're passionate about, if they pursue it and they pursue it with persistence and they don't give up, that they can accomplish whatever they set their mind to. And I think that's something that so many people are afraid, and we kind of stay in that comfort zone. And in my perspective, comfort and growth cannot coexist. So if you're comfortable, you're not growing. And that's nothing wrong with that. But I think we need to take a step beyond that comfort zone, really put ourselves out there more. For me, that was doing these live streams. You don't really like to always present myself or put my voice out there. I like to write, so I have a book that I'm working on getting published, but I know that people want to see the authenticity. They want to know you as a person, and there's no better way to get to know someone than to experience them live. And with working with this LinkedIn platform, that's a really cool way for people to get connected with myself, people to get connected with Cherry Willow and our mission and our brand. And so that was something that the first time I did it, I had to step outside of my comfort zone. And so I think that is something that, if you're watching this, whatever your mission is, take a step out of that comfort zone, be vulnerable, and just be authentic and be yourself. I think you'll be very surprised at the response that you get from people by just showing up consistently in that way. So I'd love to get your thoughts on that.
Now, what you just said there, how do you establish your personal brand? And you do have to overcome fear. And remember, fear is an internal thing. Mm-hmm. Danger is external. There's nothing dangerous about coming on a LinkedIn Live, right?
Yeah.
But you could have your own fear that you have. You're going to get the nerves a little bit changed. But when you understand what it is that you're bringing to the table, you're in your zone of genius or your purpose. When you're in your purpose zone, you don't have fear. That's how I overcame, public speaking. If I'm speaking about a subject that I don't know a whole lot about, I'm going to be a little nervous because I don't really understand it. I gotta study it. I gotta try to come up to speed on it. I'm not sure what question. But if you have done the work, this is a lived experience for you. You can get on any stage. I think someone said if you got to get on stage for 30 minutes, you've got to have about at least 300 hours of experience in doing what it is you want to do, right? I've got over 50,000 hours in personal branding, marketing, technology. There's not a whole lot I can't speak on in those terms. But what you said, you're making that shift. And I want our audience, especially our younger generation, to understand the face of the brand and how important it is. You are the differentiator, right? Mm-hmm. Because now Matt has stepped out. You might have heard, oh, Charlie Willow. Yeah. Oh, they're trying to help people with homelessness. That's interesting. But when you put a face to it, you put a soul to it. There's a spirit to it. There's a voice to it. There's light there. Right. And now they're not just speaking to Cherry Willow, they're speaking to Matt Fogarty. They understand now his story. Oh, he's a single dad. He's raising 3 kids. How is he doing that? Oh, he's trying to help homeless people. Well, this is interesting. He has a clothing outline and he's partnering with others. This is how he's doing. That right there is pure genius. When you can get collaboration and partnership and buy-in from both sides and everybody wins, win-win scenarios win. Win-win scenarios win. There's no loser in that case. Everybody wins. And this is what's important. This is what intrigues me about 5-star BDM. And you have to understand the power of personal branding. You're not just putting something out there to be vain. Understand how you're utilizing your social media and what it uses it for. The platform of itself is very, very powerful. But if you utilize it for vanity and really lower end objectives, and you just want to entertain yourself with frivolous stuff that you can't, scale from a business or a career development standpoint, what exactly are you doing? And what example are you setting? What happens when Matt's kids they see their dad and he's talking about this or that? What does that really look like? Or are they going to learn something from dad? And dad's doing something that I'm proud of, that I want to be able to do. That's a choice about how you want to present yourself, and that becomes your brand. And I want people to understand that there's nothing wrong with technology for technology's sake. It's just how you want to operate the technology. You can take a car, unfortunately, some people do, and run it into a whole bunch of other people or to a building or something. Yeah, you can do that, right? But if you're a mature individual, typically you're going to follow the rules and you're going to drive very well, and you're going to reach your objective for being in the vehicle. Have a objective for the technology vehicle that you're in that you can learn from and you can teach others about. And we can together change our experience on this planet the way it is, because I want to see more Matts out there. I want to see more Matt's kids out there. Like, look, I got something to do. It's not just making money. Money is just a vehicle. It's nice to have it, don't get me wrong. But then sitting in the bank, it's like being on a deserted island with $1 million and you're sitting there by yourself. What value does that have?
Right.
Nothing. And if you really follow the cycle of life, life is continuously giving back to itself to regenerate. We've got to get our head wrapped around this and become more mature about what we're doing and continue the cycle of life in a more mature way. That's my saying.
Yeah, I think that's really well said. And yeah, always, like, especially with Father's Day being yesterday, it's just really important to, I think, lead by example, but also just build up that belief in people. I think that when you look at kids, we show up for kids at the sporting events, regardless of if they feel like they're going to go anywhere in sports. We're there to support them. If they're doing a dance recital, if they're doing songs, whatever it is that they're pursuing, as kids, we show up and we support them. But for some reason, as adults, we don't always encourage people to continue to pursue those passions. People they're taught to, like, oh, go get like for my generation, go to college, get a safe job, work till you're 65 and maybe you'll be able to retire. And so I think that's where a lot of people, like, they're seeing that that's not necessarily a guarantee anymore. So you have people that are leveraging platforms and really building brands, across social media. And to your point, like that, how you leverage these tools, do you just want to sit there on YouTube or TikTok and just scroll all day and not get anything of value from it? Or do you want to become a creator and use those platforms to get your message out there, to just show up and be authentically yourself? And then maybe you get connected with a new audience of people. That was for me, like a little bit of how I discovered I was an entrepreneur. I was working a corporate job. I had been there for 8 years and I just wasn't giving the opportunities to move up like I wanted. And so I took a risk and went to a startup that was supported, small business owners in my community. And when I was out there connecting with small business owners every day, I was like, wow, I think a lot like these people. Like these are people that have had similar experiences to me and they decided to set out on their own. And although it may be really challenging, as 95% of small businesses don't make it past the 5-year mark, it's extremely rewarding when you're able to show up for yourself, when you're trying to create something of value that you're passionate about. And that's why you see so many of these entrepreneurs pour into their business so much. But to your point, Grant, if you're able to create a brand, then you can really scale it beyond yourself. And that's where I see a lot of entrepreneurs struggle, is they either struggle to let go of that control, because they feel like this is my brand. I feel like I need to do everything, but you can't scale by yourself. That's not sustainable. So if you can build a brand and then you can easily articulate what that brand stands for, bring people on that are aligned with the mission and the vision of that brand, like we have done at Cherry Willow. Shauna, I know, is who got us connected today. And she is just such an advocate for, people experiencing homelessness. She comes from a nonprofit background with people in the foster care system and just really resonates everything that Cherry Willow stands for and does a fantastic job. And because she's able to show up and be authentically herself because we're aligned with her beliefs. And so I think that's when you're looking at scaling a brand, finding people who resonate with the mission, they understand the vision, that is extremely important. And then letting them, portray it in their way, that it's authentic to themselves. I think that's the best way that you can really scale, brands.
I think you're spot on with everything you just said. A lot of people, where they struggle, again, to your point, first, like entrepreneurs, they don't want to let go. They don't realize they are the limiting part of their business, right? Also in careers, the same type of thing, that people usually, they are it's self-limiting for them to grow. That's why I have my what I call my Brave Brand Blueprint strategy that I deploy one-on-one to individuals, because it gives you an opportunity to understand who you are and where you're at and where you're trying to get to very objectively, right? Because unless you understand that, most people, when they think of branding or marketing, they think of the visual aspects of visual identity. And you don't get to the visual identity. Remember, I talked about the BRAVE framework. That's the 4th level in.
Right.
We're not, you're not ready to be visible, right? Right. Just like, when you manifest life on this earth, it goes through a process that is not visible, and then it makes its debut into the physical world, right? Where are you at from a brand identity? How do you assess yourself? And then how does that assessment work when it comes to a framework of what you want to accomplish, your North Star? This is what I want to become. Let's take a look at that, right? On a scaling, what I call your skills gap analysis, because till you understand that, just like any coach that you go through, you know what, I'm going to play soccer. Like, great, let's see what you got, right? Yeah. You establish the goal. I want to play soccer. You want to be good at it, but let's see where you're at now. Are you a great soccer player, a good soccer player? Or are you just really very novice in what you want to accomplish? And that has to be set against the goal that you're trying to reach in a platform of other people that have achieved that goal. So it becomes very visible to you of what you're good at and what you need to then work on to achieve that goal, not only strategically, now you've discovered it, but tactfully to get there. Because any good coach will tell you, unless you can give me, 15 push-ups in less than 15 minutes, 15 times in a day, you're never going to get there. If that's the case, like until you do that, there's nothing more to talk about. So you need to understand that about yourself. And you're like, okay. And then I always get down to the point of accountability. If that's your goal, are you going to be accountable for it? Are you going to be responsible for it? If that's your true goal, is to be an entrepreneur and develop a business and to create for yourself, right? Or you want to achieve that next development in your career. I want to get to that next level where there's manager, director, VP, CEO, and you're real about it. Because I think some people, once they get a little bit of that, what we call the headwinds, they're blowing against you kind of like stop, like, oh, that's like, oh no. You think some people don't realize, I don't think a lot of people realize, they see the success of another person and they think, hey, you know what, I'll just emulate that, for a couple of months, right? And I'll be the same way. That person most likely has been doing this for years.
Right.
5, 10 years. You're not going to just jump out the box and be at their level just because you see, oh, well, I see the output. That's the visible output. They put in the work. They got their brand identity. They did the research. They got authentic. They got the applications. They have the assets. Then they became visible. Then they executed. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I think it's the mountaintop analogy is one of my favorites, where we see people and laud them once they've reached the mountaintop, but we don't see the entire journey and all the ups and downs that it took to go and get there. And so that I feel like is, yeah, especially in just modern society, it's like, well, we see these overnight success stories and we're like, oh, I want that. And it was like, well, it's overnight to you because you didn't see the 3, 5, 10 years that they were doing this without any success, without any following. And it's just that repetition and that drive, especially when no one's watching. That's like, I forget who I was consuming someone's content, but they were telling someone and providing guidance, like, what would you do if you had like someone that was following you around and creating a documentary about your life every day? Like, would you act differently if there was a camera and this was to be broadcast out to people? And so, that for me is like, I try to show up each day and work like I would be proud. If my kids are watching me do this, can I have a really articulate reason as to why this is worth my time? And that's how I've aligned, a lot of the stuff that I do now is this impactful? Does it help me become the version of myself that I see myself as? And that's how I've really kind of started to dictate my actions. And so for one of the self-limiting beliefs that I overcame was, in getting the Pedal for Progress bike trip, which I'm going on, I believe it's in 26 days it starts, from St. John's Program for Real Change in Sacramento. And I'll be biking all the way to San Diego in 9 days. So, I've been training for that. There's been a lot of early mornings before the kids wake up where I'm doing an hour, 2 hours on the bike. A lot of long days in the afternoons, just biking by myself on a bike path. But, I picked that route because it's 7 of the 14 cities with the highest number of people experiencing homelessness. We've partnered with organizations to talk to them about the great work they're doing. And we're going to create a documentary about the trip and be able to tell the stories of the people that homelessness impacts. And again, the goal is to create empathy, for you to see that person and on the street and connect with them rather than disconnect and try to just, have that tunnel vision. No, there is something that you can do. You can stop and talk to that person, and that does make a difference. I think that's one of the self-limiting beliefs a lot of people have, is they feel like they can't make a difference, especially with a problem as large as homelessness. But if we're all operating that way, then we're not going to end up making a difference. If we have 330 million people in this country, if we're all showing up each day believing that our actions make a difference, that's another thing where it's like, are you familiar with the butterfly effect?
Yeah.
Where people, when it's like, oh, if you ever talk about time travel or you go back in time, one small change can make a huge difference, into the future. But people
Yep.
don't operate that way in the present. And it's like,
Yeah.
no, one
Make
small
a
change
small
right
change
now.
right now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
make the change right now. That's going to have a huge ripple effect into the future. And so that's what I always advocate for is, do your best, show up, be your best authentic self, but, work towards becoming the best version of yourself. That's another one of the things I took away from Atomic Habits, which is a great book if you need structure, but just, 1% better every day. If you're 1% better every day, then at the end of the year, you're 37 times better because of compounding, than you were at the beginning of the year. But just take those small steps each day and be kind to yourself, and work on loving yourself. And then as a brand, that's for Cherry Willow. It's like, that's what we stand for. Unconditional love. If we don't have that for ourselves, then we can't have that for others. And so that's how we can make the most impact, is just by showing up, with that unconditional love.
Yeah. And unconditionally, you reached out to me. The 5-star BDM shirt is available on the platform right now. And I love the fact, because I started with the number 5, I'm first. When you go to the collab, you're like, boom, you can see me, right there. And just know that, first of all, I'm helping you. I'm here to help you. So when you wear the 5-star BDM shirt, that brand is about yourself and what you really want to goal. What do you want to achieve? And get real with yourself. I want everyone to get real with themselves, because if you're going to dedicate the time, just like Matt just said, if you're going to sit there and say, you know what, I'm going to participate in this bike event, you got to be ready.
Yeah. And I love, just that you are the brand, and especially I think with AI, there a lot of people are concerned about the disruption that may have, but AI is not going to have a brand in and of itself. As a person, you can build a brand that, people are going to connect with people. That I think is going to be one of the things that comes out of AI, where it's like, there's so much online, so much confusion, so much, to your point earlier, we were talking about fake news. And with these AI generated content, it's going to be very challenging to be able to tell, what actually is real versus what was generated. So you as a person are real, like you can develop
100%.
that brand that's authentic. And that's going to be a way that you can differentiate. And then again, start to connect with people back in person, connect via Zoom on a live event. This is not something that can be easily simulated. And so I think there's going to be more of, kind of a renaissance of that analog, of that face-to-face interpersonal communication. So if you're not developing those skills, that's a way that you can differentiate yourself as a brand. And AI is just going to continue to evolve, and its use cases are going to continue to evolve. So it's not something that you need to be afraid of, but ask yourself, how can you leverage it to differentiate yourself and further yourself as a brand? And so I feel like that's something that people, if
No,
they
what
want to
you're
learn
saying
more
there,
about
Matt, and I want the audience to take this one sentence away, as and taking somebody that's a 30-year veteran in information technology. AI is a tool set. It's a very powerful tool set in communications and speed and what it does, but use it for one thing: amplification, human amplification, amplify yourself. The other one is refinement. Don't have it do ideation of your original thought. Create something for yourself. Use AI for refinement of what you've created, right? And then use it for amplification to promote what it is that you've done, right? And as you just said, you can't just duplicate the true human self. The human mind is so intricate and so powerful. It's more powerful than the most supercomputer you can think of right now in its scope and how it does. But when it operates together with other supercomputers, these superhumans that are out there, that now you have a tool like an AI that's a part of that. So a human AI amplified, refined production is a powerful, powerful combination.
Yeah, absolutely. And so again, if you would like to learn more about branding and get in touch with Grant, again, his website is 5starbdm.com. You can find more about their information at the site. And then we also, again, have the Cherry Willow collab. So if you want to support both of our organizations, that is the best way to do that. is be the brand that you are, represent that 5-star BDM brand, represent Cherry Willow, and tell them, hey, we actually came across this on a live stream and we really were moved by the cause, and we're actually working to become our own brand now. And tell that story, and have your own origin story, which I'm excited to read more about on Grant's website. And then if you want to support Cherry Willow and our work, like I said, we are accepting new partners. You can get in touch with myself, Matt at cherrywillowapparel.com, or Shauna at cherrywillowapparel.com, to learn more about the partnerships, how we operate. And then, if you want to support the Pedal for Progress ride, you can find information about it there, cherrywillowapparel.com/events. The ride will be taking place from July 12th through the 20th. We'll be putting content out across my personal social channels, as well as Cherry Willow's brand accounts leading up to the trip, documenting the training, also announcing the different partnerships that we'll be stopping at along the way. And while we're on the trip, we're going to be putting out content, capturing interviews of people that are affected by homelessness, and then also capturing stories of the people that have dedicated their lives to ending homelessness, highlighting the solutions. Together, we can end homelessness, but it's going to take a community of people that are educated, that are advocating for the people experiencing homelessness, that are empathetic to them and their plight, and then also focused on empowering them. So really, thank you all for joining today's live stream. I hope you had a good time and that you took away some really valuable information about how you can help people experiencing homelessness. And, hopefully you learn a little bit more about how you can build your own brand. And if you'd like assistance with that, again, Grant has been in it for 30 years, and I'm sure he would love to have a conversation with you. So Grant, any parting words for us here?
No, I want to thank you again, your entire team at Cherry Willow. Everything you're doing, you are in the right direction, and you will achieve your ultimate goal. So thank you again for having me on the show.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much for joining us, Grant. It was a pleasure. Great conversation. People in the audience, thank you for watching. And tune in next time as we will have more partners and more exciting updates on the Pedal for Progress.